Hi, Intro to Psych learners. This week we're talking about Module 5. So you want to click on your course menu, go to Learning Modules, and click on Module 5 if you're not there already. I'm going to discuss the discussion second because if you've been watching these, then you already know how to do that. And so I'll just get right to the Project 2 milestone, and I'm going to go to Guidelines and Rubric. This one is pretty straightforward. You want to be watching this video and it's linked right there. And you can see that you want to summarize the key takeaways from that video, and it's telling you right where to go in the video so that you don't really necessarily have to watch the whole thing, although it is interesting. And then that's all that you're doing. You're summarizing it there. And then if you look down here at the rubric, just note that you want to address a few things. You want to look at the connections between procrastination, coping, and motivation, and it specifically says the ways procrastination is a negative form of coping as well as a positive form of coping. So just don't forget to do both of those, negative and positive. I think negative is more straightforward. Positive, you might have to do some thinking. And then also note that it talks about how intrinsic or extrinsic motivation relates to procrastination. So I do suggest going into your book. I would do a search up here. Let me go back to the beginning so that you can see how it looks. Contents. And then I'm going to go back just so you can see it. And then I would type in intrinsic motivation. If you ever type in two words, just note that they come up separate too. Like, see how it's looking for motivation, and it's also looking for the word intrinsic. If we get down here, like there's intrinsic motivation together, that's what we're looking for. But I'm just saying it can be a little bit tricky because like down here it just says intrinsic, and so just keep that in mind. It's finding both of them. All right, so let's go right to what's intrinsic motivation on page 5.6. And it's talking about intrinsic motivation here. So you definitely want to be including that information. We can do the same thing in search for extrinsic motivation, but you know it's going to, like, see how it already brought us back to chapter 5. And even if we just clicked on chapter 5 and made it expand, you can see that it's talking about extrinsic motivation here. So that would be another place to read if you hadn't read this yet. So extrinsic motivation. And then we're also looking for how it is related to our forms of coping. And remember how you guys did this before. Like you already did the coping quiz where it said different forms of coping. So that's where it's talking about coping. So here's coping mechanisms and proactive coping. So these would be good places to return so that you're talking about coping as well. And then it was like the coping scale and reflective coping and so forth. So you might want to turn back to this page, which is page 4.18, in order to get the information that you need to answer that second part of the rubric. That second critical element. So make sure that you're talking about a negative and a positive form of coping and how one of those motivations relate to procrastination. And then for this one where it says resilience, this critical element, you want to say how procrastination could be considered a good thing. And you want to reframe procrastination to promote resilience. So just don't forget to say, because if you like leave out how you can relate resilience to procrastination, if you're leaving out some of this stuff, you can see that you drop down in a category. So in particular, let's look in the book for resilience. You could start, like, see how if you just go to the contents and you have the pages open, can you see how it discussed resilience on page 4.23? So turn right back to that page. It's talking about resilience. So make sure that you're including that information when you address this critical element, and just make sure that you talk about how it could be considered a good thing. And then don't forget that you want to cite the book when you include information from it. Go to Tools. You can get this citation guide and it will download it for you. And if you're looking at that citation guide, it's telling you right there how to cite. Okay, so then let me go back into the module. And just remember that for the discussion rubric that you're always looking at the rubric itself. Like, remember to support what you're saying with credible resources. And again, our book is our credible resource for this course, so make sure that you're citing it. Include information from it and put Harper 2024 in parentheses at the end of the sentence or phrase that contains that information. Make sure that you're elaborating on how more than one of the programmatic themes relates to our discussion. You'll get, proficient if you just do one, but you want to do more than one in order to get that ideal grade of exemplary. And for advancement of discussion, just don't forget to integrate views from other learners and sources. That's even here for proficient. And you drop down here if you don't include those other sources. And these don't say they have to be credible, so this can be from anywhere. And then just make sure to use that APA citation, meaning that you're doing Harper, 2024 at the ends of the sentences that contain information from our book. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I hope you have a good week.